Welcome everyone to this installment of Training Center Manager video training. My name is John Matus and I'm going to walk you today through the Billing Manager's functions for creating invoices. To be able to create an invoice, we need to first assign an account to a client. So our little scenario here is going to assume that you've done some training for this client, that they already have a client profile, and that you need to transition their information into the Billing Manager to generate an invoice. So we're going to start by going to the Billing link up here. And that's going to load essentially the same form I had before. And next I'm going to go to Accounts. And this is where you set up a financial account for a client in TCM. So the scenario that I want to paint for you here is that it's possible that you may have one client who has different divisions that have to be invoiced. So we don't really maintain a client to account one-to-one relationship. Sometimes one client will have many accounts, and then perhaps several clients will be bunched into one financial account. So this becomes a little complicated depending on your business and how you go about invoicing the folks you do business with, but I'm going to show you a pretty straightforward scenario. So we have a client in the training record, so a client profile for XYZ Industries, but you'll notice here in the account section we do not have a financial account set up for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the New Account button, and that's going to load a form from which we can choose existing clients in TCM. So I'm going to go here to the client list, and I'm going to select the client that I would like to deal with, in this case XYZ Industries. So when I select them off the list, what you'll notice is all of their information populates over from the client area of TCM. So this is the data we put in there to run their training course, and it automatically will port over to the financial side for the purposes of creating an account. I'm going to give them a $2,000 credit limit, and then I'm going to save. Now what this does is it takes all of the information again from the client area of TCM, generates a financial account for them, and assigns them a $2,000 credit limit, as you can see here. My next move will be go over here to the Invoice section, and I'm going to go ahead and generate a invoice for them. So here I am in the invoice area, and I'm going to go ahead and select XYZ Industries from the list. I'm going to create a new invoice, although I do have to adjust this date range slightly, because that does not include today's date, and I won't see my newly created invoice. So I'm going to hit the New Invoice button, and what it essentially does is it populates an invoice with the same bill to and ship to addresses, as you see here. It also gives us a reference page. So I'm going to put in the reference, a class date, Global April Fool's Day, just to kind of be fun. And I'll maybe put the class name in there. So a client receiving this is going to know that it's an invoice for the BLS for healthcare providers that we did at their site on 4/1/2014. Next, I'm going to add a product. And the product section is going to populate all of the products that you have in your system. So these are examples that we have here. You can also search them by name or description or product code, but these are the only two loaded into our test database. So I'm going to select the BLS student. And again, it'll populate that particular invoice item onto the list. So let's say that this particular class was for 8 students. 8 students for $400. Next, I'm going to save the invoice, and you will notice that it'll refresh the list and provide you with a $400 invoice total. So your next portion is to go ahead and print the invoice by hitting Invoice Report. And what that does is it generates a printable and or emailable PDF of the invoice that you can send to your customer, or perhaps print and mail, depending on, again, how you do business. I'll just give you a quick view of that. So here's our invoice populating into Adobe. I'll shrink it down a little so you can see it all in one shot. So it will look something like this. I could just print it onto paper at this point, or perhaps I could email it to the customer, depending on, again, how you do business. Now let's say that at some point in time we receive some payment for this particular invoice. And I would like to go ahead and log those monies. I can hit the little dollars here, which is record payment. So let's say that I billed them for $400. 30 days later, a check arrives for $400. I can simply put the 400 in there. I can log the receipt type, and I can allocate it. Now you'll notice it comes up as $400 unallocated, because what I need to do is put it to a specific invoice. If this customer had many invoices here, they would all display, so you can allocate the monies as you see fit. So as you can see here, I've allocated $400 to invoice 13-50001, and there are $0 left to allocate. So I'm going to save this. That will refresh the page below it. And you'll notice the balance due is now 0. Now these $400 at this point will show on receivables reports. They will show on the volume for XYZ industry. So if you wanted to go ahead and see how much money you've made with XYZ industry this year, those $400 would show. And if I print this invoice again, it will show as a $0 invoice. So I hope that that's been helpful for you. There are other little features that you can very usefully use. This is the clone invoice feature. So if I wanted to clone this, what will happen is it'll make a duplicate of the invoice, except that it will mark it not paid. So as you can see, it created invoice number 50004, and it copied all of the information, including the reference line and the amount. However, because it's a new invoice, it assumes it hasn't been paid yet. This is particularly useful if you have customers who have recurring fees. So for example, if you bill somebody $50 a month for something, or if you bill somebody, I don't know, $100 a quarter or $10 a week or whatever, you can simply clone a previous invoice. It'll generate it with today's date as opposed to the previous date, and mark it open so that you don't have to go ahead and make the invoice from scratch every single time. So I hope that that's been useful for you. That was, again, our quick demo of the Training Center Suite and Training Center Suite with Web Services billing function. If you have any questions regarding our product, you can get additional information at trainingcentermanager.com. Thanks again.